watch me as I look at notes and back and forth. So I'm Katri Gurney. I'm the Trails and Access Manager at the Squam Lakes Association. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I've been with the Squam Lakes Association for about 4 years now, a little over 4 years, and I've been in this position for almost 2 years. I've titled this presentation Trails and Access with parentheses to the outdoors, because frequently when we just talk about access within the conservation environmental movement, people don't understand quite what that implies. So giving the descriptor to the outdoors frequently provides that additional explanation of what we're talking about. So agenda. The bulk of this presentation is probably going to cover the trail maintenance and projects that are both completed in 2019 and then projects that are ongoing. So things that are currently happening that started in 2019 or before 2019 and are continuing on. Then we'll move into camping and campsite management and maintenance, then facilities, boat storage and boat rentals here at SLA, and then discuss the impact of some of the things that are happening nationally and internationally, such as COVID-19 and then diversity and inclusion. And then we'll leave time for questions at the end. All right, so trail work and projects. So the Lakes Region Conservation Corps, they are a primary body that do trail work out on our trails. This is mostly level 1 trail work. And when I say level 1 trail work, I mean lopping to clear the corridors of branches, the trail corridors of branches, removing blowdowns, clearing drainage, and filling in social trails. So that's what our Lakes Region Conservation Corps members are doing, and frequently they're leading volunteers out in the field while they're doing this. So just to give you an idea of 2019, we had 63 trail days in 2019. Those ranged from 9 to 1 or 9 to 5 in terms of the time during the day. And we committed 1,152 crew hours to the trails between our Lakes Region Conservation Corps and the volunteers they led out in the field. Of the 63 days, half of those, so 31 of those, were open to volunteers, and we had volunteers on 21 of those days. We had 21 individual volunteers as well, with 5 recurring volunteers. We also had 2 opportunities to work with groups. So frequently New Hampton will come and serve with us for a day. So they did that back in September to help us prepare for the Ridge Race. That was to get the 4-mile loop ready for the Ridge Race. And we also had a restaurant, Cactus Jack, come and volunteer with us in April of 2019 on Earth Day, clearing water bars going up Old Bridal Path. So just exciting engagement with volunteer groups. Just to give you an idea for this year, we currently have had 29 trail days, and we've committed 503 crew hours, but we've also had 24 individual volunteers already. So COVID is definitely wanting people to get outdoors, and so we've had a lot of signups for trail days. So it's exciting to be able to get people outside, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we're doing that later on in the presentation. In terms of 2019 completed projects, I'm actually going to skip forward in the slides so you can actually see what the completed projects are. So the first project that was completed in 2019 was an updated version of the map. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the map itself, so the front side of the map, which has our trail networks, the Squam Range, trails in the Sandwich Range that we maintain. And changes on the front side of the map included, you'll see the mile marking. If you get a larger version, you'll see the mile marking was clarified more to create start and end points for where miles mile marking like started and ended. We also added stars to non-summit points of interest. So you'll see like Black Mountain Pond received that. There's a section between the Brooks Fisher Trail and Mount Webster that received one of those little stars. Additionally, we added Brooks Fisher to this map and a couple of other trails that aren't necessarily maintained by us, but that connect to some of our networks. What I think is super exciting about this map is the backside. So we had Belknap Woods, Whitten Woods, and Chamberlain Reynolds Memorial Forest were on a scale that we couldn't include on the front side of the map. So we added these insets for those 4 areas onto the back side of the map. So that has directions and the maps for all of those locations. In addition, on the back side of the map, we also included a trail rating guide so that people can easily take a look and see, what it is that they're looking for in terms of trail difficulty when they're going out. We also wanted to include trail squam hiking ethics because that's something that frequently can get buried within the content, and we wanted it to be easy for people to see that and to read and start thinking about how they're interacting with the trails and thinking about the ways in which they hike. We also included the mission of the Squam Lakes Association, history, all of that, and a description of those people who have helped us on the trails and those organizations that we partner with on the trails. Another project that we worked on in 2019 was junction signs and kiosk content. So in 2019, we had Alex Reiber, who is one of our AmeriCorps members. He routed and painted our new cedar signs for the Cotton Mountain and Mount Livermore Trail Network areas. So he worked on routing and painting those signs and installing them. So we got all of those installed in 2019. Additionally, I was working on the content for the kiosk at the Cotton Mountain Trailhead. And this is actually what you see on the right side of your screen is a design that we're going to be using for all of our kiosks in the future. We wanted something that looked professional, but also wasn't bogged down by information. So you'll notice on a lot of our current kiosks, we have just random flyers here and there, or like a trail map that's faded. That doesn't really give you an idea of where you are. So we wanted to create a design that, conveys what the Squam Lakes Association does, but also where you are. The most important thing being where you are, what the trail's like, and what's around you. In addition to that, we added hiking ethics, the things that we found most important for people to take away with them when they're hiking the trail. And we mentioned those who own conservation easements on the lands that people are going to be walking and who owns the land. So that is the design that we're gradually going to phase in for all of our other kiosks, as we also do maintenance on those kiosks. All right, so now this is more of the outdoors in the field work. On the left-hand side, we see a partnership with the University of New Hampshire on the old Bridal Path Trail. So starting in 2017, many of you I'm sure will recall, we had an initiative for hikers in the summer to carry up riprap and rocks and gravel to this one location on the trail. So that started back in the summer of 2017, and people were so excited to do that. We still get people asking questions if they can carry rocks up the trail. We're like, you could, there wouldn't really be a point to it. But we also had our interns that year help with carrying some of the slabs up. And over the past 2 years, we've had AmeriCorps members join for 2 to 4 days. The UNH crew, who's led by Steve Eisenhower, they've joined them to install these steps and water bars to mitigate erosion and harden the trail. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see another project that was completed in 2019, which was a relocation on the Wentworth Trail going up to Mount Israel. So Cole Beal and Adele Barnes joined our partner with the U.S. Forest Service, Kristen Bailey, creating this relocation. So there was an area on the trail that a stream had pretty much completely swamped. And so people were going around and widening the trail more and more and more. So I went out with Kristen Bailey earlier in the summer to see what we could do. And we were able to find this small relocation to get people away from that area, minimize the expansion of the trail, and keep it to a nice single track. And then finally in the middle, so this was not completed in 2019. This was completed actually about 3 weeks ago, but it's very exciting. So Steve Eisenhower and I, so again, he's our partner at the University of New Hampshire. We went and walked Old Bridal Path back in June. And while we were walking, we noticed that there was this short section that was really heavily eroded and had former steps that had just completely just like degraded away and rotted away. So we talked about getting some 6x6s, and he was able to get a crew out there and funding out there to get a couple of steps installed there, just to decrease the water just like rushing down that section. So that actually was completed this year. Our ongoing trail projects is lengthy, and it'll jump around a teeny bit. So the Squam Range junction signs, I'm just gonna jump back to this slide. You'll see all of our junction signs are modeled on the cedar with routing, hand routed and painted. And we are continuing to update the junction signs across the Squam Range. So we actually, this year in 2020, Maggie Polishino and Michaela Wells, two of our AmeriCorps members, completed the signs for the Mount Morgan, Mount Percival loop, and they installed those back in April. We are now focusing our efforts onto Rattlesnake in the coming year. So for 2021, we'll focus our efforts on Rattlesnake. We have done a couple of updates there, specifically at the Pinehurst access for Five Finger Point, Pasture Trail, East Rattlesnake Trail, and Coal Trail, just to clarify some things there. As I mentioned, we're also updating the content for the kiosks, and that's modeled off of this Cotton Mountain design. We're making gradual tweaks, but we have made finalized the kiosk for Pinehurst Road. So we actually will be installing a brand new kiosk off of Pinehurst Road, and that is completed. And over the next year or two, I'm going to be updating the content for the rest of the kiosks to be installed. The Trail Adopters program, I'm currently working with a volunteer, Jay Frost. He has volunteered to work on communications to like reestablish the Trail Adopter program, which has sort of fallen a bit behind, and we want to just revamp it and start to nurture that program again. So I'm really excited to be working with Jay Frost. That's a pretty new partnership. And then Squam Ridge Race. So in 2019, we had 134 participants in the Ridge Race. So that's about what we were getting the previous years. We had 150 in 2018, 145 the year before, 113 the year before. This year, it's a little bit in flux. Most likely we will not be holding the in-person event, and we're looking into potential alternatives since we most likely will not be hosting the in-person event. So be looking out for a communication regarding that. One of the biggest initiatives of this year, which may or may not be able to happen, is through the National Civilian Community Corps. So we have we applied for a grant to receive a crew of 8 to 12 people, ages 18 to 24, to work on 2 trail building projects. The program is a little in flux right now, and we were expecting to hear it back in April, and they keep delaying it due to COVID, which is completely understandable. But the 2 projects that we were having them we were going to apply them to are the Eastman Brook Trail project and the Witten Woods Bike Trail. So the Eastman Brook Trail, that's a trail that's going to be located off of 113, and actually the Squam Lakes Conservation Society installed the parking lot for that trail earlier this summer. So it'll start from that parking lot, which is located across the street from the Coal Trail parking lot on 113. So we will be working with Pete and Roger at SLCS to route that trail. So we've currently got an idea of the track, and we've done a little bit of flagging. So that's about a 1 mile section that we should be able to finish up pretty soon. And the hope was to use the National Civilian Community Corps to tackle building that trail. But I have high hopes that we'll be able to also just use the AmeriCorps that we currently have if we're unable to secure this crew. The other project that we would have the National Civilian Community Corps work on is the Witten Woods Bike Trail project. So this is something that's been on the table since the New England Forestry Foundation acquired Witten Woods about 5 years back, and Squam Lakes Conservation Society worked on that partnership. So that's going to be a 3 mile loop in Witten Woods for a bike trail. It's roughly mapped, but it's not flagged. So I'm hoping to get out there in August to flag that in anticipation of the NCCC crew. And then West Rattlesnake. So just to jump back to 2019, in 2019, we counted 13,265 hikers on West Rattlesnake over the weekends that we were trail hosting. And that was with 57 days at the trailhead. The max amount of hikers we had was 595, and that's compared to both in 2016 and 2017, the max amount of hikers counted was in the 700s. Normally we see those numbers in the fall. So far this year, we haven't seen numbers that high. But the most exciting thing about trail hosting from last year is that it was the first full year that we had the no parking signs installed on Route 113. So just to give you a couple of numbers, so in 2018, the no parking signs were installed in early September, but in 2018, 70% of days had cars that we were on at the trailhead. 70% of those days had cars parked on the side of the road, versus in 2019, 28% of days had cars parked on the side of the road. So that's a good 40% difference. The other thing that's that the numbers show is that in 2018, the average number of cars parked on the side of the road was 14 cars on those days that there were cars parked on the side of the road, versus in 2019, the average number of cars parked on the side of the road was 4. And that's only counting days that cars were parked on the side of the road. So definitely safety has been increased at that trailhead. And we're hoping that with the light up sign that the Holderness Police is providing, and with people like knowing that the police are present, and that it's being, the no parking is being enforced, that the conditions there will just get better and better. I will say the only way that we can know if they're getting worse, aside from our trail hosts, is if we hear from the public. So we're always happy to hear from the public if there are any issues out there. I mean, obviously not happy, but we really want to hear feedback from the public if there are issues there. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but Pinehurst Road, we've been working to help mitigate traffic there. So the Holderness Police have put up no parking signs, temporary no parking signs on one side of the road. I was talking with Kathy Wheeler of Rocky Well Deep Haven earlier in the season, and we put up a sign at the junction, or at the intersection of Pinehurst Road and Route 113 to make sure that people continue straight as opposed to turning right onto Pinehurst Road to get to the Rattlesnake Trailhead. I was working with 2 community members of the Pinehurst Road Association, and through that we were talking about the content for a kiosk to be put there. And additionally, we changed up, or we replaced the junction signs at that location in order to ensure that hikers were going the correct way and not rambling onto private property. So a lot of effort's been done on the Pinehurst Road area of the Rattlesnake Network. Then for West Rattlesnake, just general erosion control and trail maintenance. I've continued to work with Steve Eisenhower at UNH to think about potential ways to mitigate massive erosion issues that we're having on that trail and overuse issues that we're having on that trail. So we're planning to apply for a recreational trails program grant that we're going to start working on this fall in preparation to apply in 2021 and receive funds in 2022 for some larger scale projects focused on erosion mitigation at the start of the trail and closer to the summit. And then finally, interpretive trail signs. So these are signs that I've been working with AmeriCorps to create. So Adele Barnes, our communications coordinator, she actually created the content for those signs, and they're currently in a draft stage, but I'm distributing them to partners to take a look at, because the signs themselves are about sustainable hiking practices and getting people to understand what goes into maintaining a trail and how they can help. So Adele did a really great job on that. So we just got to finalize that content. And then Elijah Shoemaker, one of our AmeriCorps members this year, he did a fantastic job creating a blueprint for the signs using a nice cedar structure that I believe will fit nicely into the scenery and not take too much away from the trail experience. So that's a really exciting project that's gradually moving along, and hope to have more progress in the years to come. Right, away from trails and on to camping and campsite management. In 2019, our projects focused a lot on just general dock and platform maintenance. We redecked one of the tent platforms on Moon 1. We completely rebuilt one of the platforms at Chamberlain Reynolds on campsite Worcester 1. And then general composting toilet maintenance, specifically digging out our composts was a big project and continues to be a big project. Ongoing projects that we have. So on the smaller scale, Camp Hale with their whole campus renovation project their campus looks phenomenal. With all of that, they are getting new docks. So they've donated floating docks to us, which we are looking at methods to install on our island sites so that we can have easier removal and installation in the spring and the fall. So we are gradually going to be acquiring those and trying to retrofit them for our islands. Additionally, so sort of the big project for the campsites, or definitely the big project for the campsites, is a composting toilet for Bowman Island, adjacent to the campsites 1, 2, and 3. This is a project that both Angie and I worked on applying to a Moose Plate grant for, and we received the grant, and the grant covers the Clivus system itself. So this is a vault composting toilet as opposed to a bucket system that just is able to have more of a capacity for people. And this project we are hoping to install in October. The plan is to install in October. So now we are we're working on acquiring funds for building the structure, solar installation, and tree work that's going to occur in that area. So there are a couple of moving parts to that, but we're really excited to get that installed in October. For facilities, boat storage, and boat rentals, there was in 2019 and there is in 2020 a wait list for mooring dock and dryland storage. That is for private storage of sailboats and smaller power boats on our campus. The biggest project in 2019 was obviously the solar installation, which went up in June after the roofing project occurred in May. And we did have a small kiosk installed in our great room that shows the production of our solar array that unfortunately is not accessible right now with the building closed, but when it reopens, you can check that out. Some ongoing and potential projects. So always ongoing. I mean, there's various maintenance projects, but dock maintenance. So that's both the private docks and our docks for our work boats. Electrifying campus is something that Evie and I have talked about, where we would like to be a model for having a sustainable campus, and especially with having solar, the more we can electrify things and the more we can move away from gas, the better. So we're looking into electric motors, potentially electric vehicles. We would like to get an electric vehicle charging station installed. So that's something that we're excited about, that we'll be working on in the years to come. Terrestrial invasive plant removal. So this sort of falls into both conservation and to facilities. So we've had some volunteers who are super, super dedicated to terrestrial invasive plant removal on our campus. In addition, due to COVID and an inability to dive, we've had our AmeriCorps members really focused and keyed in on terrestrial invasive plant removal on our campus and at some of our trailheads. Finally, a project that we're considering, and I'm hoping to apply for a recreational trails program grant for, is an interpretive trail, or a boardwalk essentially, along the section of land where our private sailboat docks are, that goes a little bit out into the cove to provide a viewing platform. My hope is that this would be ADA compliant, so that it would create an access point for people to get closer to wildlife for all. Okay, so finally on to the international matters at hand. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but COVID-19 policies. If you want to read about how we're managing our campsites and our islands, I would just recommend going to our website. Honestly, there's a lot that we had to work through with that. And we're following both the governor's task force guidelines in addition to CDC guidelines to write those up. In terms of trail maintenance and volunteers, we are limiting our trail maintenance days to 4 people. That's with 2 AmeriCorps members leading them. So the idea is that the 2 AmeriCorps members are essentially leading 2 other people, can socially distance, wear masks when they're in groups, wear masks when they're in close contact with each other, and minimizing tool sharing. We did decide to forego boat rentals for this year, aside from to campers who need them to get out to the islands. Unfortunately, just due to the nature of boat rentals, the process of flipping canoes and kayaks and just getting people set with everything, there are just a lot of contact points that we didn't feel comfortable with, both for the renter and for our AmeriCorps members. And then finally, SLA facilities. Our campus is open, the outside of our campus is open, but the building itself is closed and will likely remain closed for the foreseeable future, and our bathrooms on our campus are closed. Finally, just in this movement of Black Lives Matter, I feel it's necessary to just talk about diversity and inclusion and the steps that the Squam Lakes Association is taking towards fostering diversity and inclusion at the SLA. So right now, we're considering ways that SLA can better foster meaningful access to the outdoors and a whole other host of topics that are related to diversity and inclusion. But for me right now, I'm going to focus on access, but right now we are forming a committee to look at diversity and inclusion at the SLA. We're having routine discussions and resource sharing between staff about this topic, and participating in webinars and forums about this topic. We're considering, we're really open to considering all sorts of options. Just to give you an idea, one thing we're thinking about is our boat rentals. If you're a family of 4 and you want to rent 2 canoes, that's $100 a day, and that's something that, if you're on vacation, can be accessible, but if you're trying to immerse someone in the outdoors and get them excited and engaged, potentially can be prohibitive in terms of cost. So we're thinking about ways that we can make maybe free rentals available, or have more programmatic methods of getting people out consistently on the water. So those are just some things that we're considering, but this is really just an internal reflection by all of us to think about the ways that we can foster a more diverse and inclusive atmosphere at the Squam Lakes Association. And that is the end of my presentation. Questions?